Okay, Chairman, we're live and you are able to start the meeting.
Right, thank you. Good evening. May I welcome all councillors and members of the viewing public to the meeting on Northamptonshire Shadow Authority. Members are reminded to keep your microphone muted unless invited to speak. If you wish to debate an item this evening, you are requested to raise your electronic hand and then lower it again having spoken. Having been invited to speak, a mover of an agenda report may speak for up to 5 minutes, with all our members having a maximum of 3 minutes. May I also remind you that the voting this evening will take place via a Zoom poll. When you're asked to vote, please set either in favour, against or abstain and then press submit. The result will then be read out. Moving on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do I have any apologies for absence? Ben?
Yeah, we have received apologies from Councillors McEwen, Allibone, Byrne, Graves, Scanlon, Stevenson, Farrer, Peacock, Janet Pinnock, Ron Pinnock, Shacklock, Matthews, Henson, Brown, West. Are there any other apologies that members are aware of?
I've got Councillor Mercer, Jill Mercer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Colin Wright sends his apologies.
Thank you.
Councillor Matt Keane.
I have apologies for Councillor Judy Kane and Councillor Paul Beattie.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Addison.
I have apologies from Councillor Bob Isles.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Shimscore. Sorry.
Councillor Linda Adams.
Right, thank you. Any other councillors? If you could put your blue hands down, please, if you've spoken. Thank you. We'll now move to item 2. Are there any declarations of interest, members? I have Councillor Ruth Groom.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm an employee of the Northamptonshire County Council Library Service. Thank you.
Right. Any other member? Right, okay, we'll move on. Item 3. The minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of August 2020 are set out on pages 07 to 16 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect of the accuracy? Anybody got any accuracy problems? If not, may I have a mover for the minutes, please, and a seconder for the minutes?
I'm happy to move the minutes, Chairman.
Hang on,
I'll second that, Chair.
I've got Councillor Mark Pengelly. Got some hand up. Councillor Mark Pengelly.
I will wait till after my hands up for after the vote's taken.
Okay, thank you. Right, I have a mover, Councillor David McNamara, and a seconder. Did I hear a seconder?
It was me, Councillor Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Thank you. If there are no, now, are there any amendments to the minutes?
So point of order, Chair.
Yes, come on, Councillor.
The point of order is meeting procedural D, page 77, 11A, questions at shadow meetings. If people remember, this is all to do with 11A on the Constitution and Appendix 6, 1, 2 and 3. And it all goes on about what happened at the last meeting. At the last meeting, Chris Stamber moved a motion, and that motion was to do with the highways contract. The chair quite rightly said there was 15 minutes to speak and also gave a set amount of time to ask questions and make statements. What happened, the chair allowed a member from a separate authority from the NCC to come in and make a statement that was over the 3 minutes. The Constitution clearly states the only people that can speak at these meetings are meetings of this authority, Northampton Shadow. The minutes, if you've just agreed, allowed the member from Northamptonshire County Council to make a statement and take the time that was very, very valuable to us as North Northamptonshire councillors. I'm not saying that member should not have spoken, but he should have spoken separately to what was in that debate. He should have opened the debate and had something along the line of what you wanted, but he took valuable time that we as members should have had, and I'm just hoping that will never happen again.
Right, can I just point out for the record, the lead member is a member of the executive and he was entitled to speak. He is a member of this authority and he would respond on invite as our lead members will do. But I'll take your point and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again if there's anybody outside the authority.
Yeah, Chairman, I've got another point of order. That's first point of order. The minutes did make clear he was speaking in his role as an NCC member, not a shadow authority member. That's what you've just agreed and what we voted on. He was speaking as a member of NCC. The second point of order, Chair, is more procedural to do with the future of North Northants Council, and it's to do with part 1 of the Constitution, and it's on page 10, and it's to do with we are shadow members of the authority, and we are here because we are members of our principal councils. So I'm here because I'm a member of Corby Council. You're here because you're a member of East Northants Council. What the Constitution clearly states is the shadow authority will come to the end on the 4th day after the 2021 local elections. It also says that the principal authorities will end on the 4th day after the 2021 local elections. Of course, the local authorities don't end then, they end on the 31st of March. So therefore, we will not be councillors. So therefore, we are not allowed to be members of Northants Unitary Shadow Council. So for 6 weeks, the Unitary Authority will be run with no councillors. This needs to be looked at urgently, or the council will be running illegally. I'm just wondering whether that could be looked at by yourself and the monitoring officer, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Just a matter of record, I'm a member of Wellingborough, not East Northants, and we will look at that point you just raised. Thank you. Right. Councillor Anna Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of order as well. It's been reported to me that you're the only one in view on the live stream. So I wonder whether the live stream on YouTube can show other councillors as well. But also, point of order, I wonder whether we can allow members of the public to speak on resolutions in future, because that is the case in the other councils, and that has not been residents who asked to speak on resolutions have been told they're not allowed to speak on it, which I don't think matches the spirit of this council. Thank you.
We'll look into that second point for you, and whether we can do the R bit, we'll look into that as well on both points. Okay, Councillor Helen Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, actually, it's in reference to Councillor Pengelly's statement about sovereign authority members not being councillors after the end of March up until the 10th of May, when the new authority takes its official stance. We discussed this actually on the Governance Task and Finish group this afternoon, and it was confirmed to us that we would, although we wouldn't be councillors within our sovereign authority, we would remain councillors right up until the day that the new authority takes control. So I just thought I'd clarify that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, anybody else to point of accuracy? If not, there's no amendments made. I've got approval of minutes, has been moved and seconded. I now ask Ben to conduct a poll. Please, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. As ever, members, you have 30 seconds in which to cast your vote for, against, or abstain, and I'm launching the poll now. Thank you, members. Chair, the results of that vote are there were 86 votes cast, 82 in favour, 1 against and 3 abstentions.
Okay, that's 82 for, 1 against and 3 abstentions. Thank you. Moving on to item agenda 4, questions from the public. Are there notifications of questions received from the public? Ben?
None, Chairman. There are, however, three requests to address the meeting on item 7, which is the Northamptonshire draft blueprint. And those members of the public are Stephen Esler, John Padwick and Des Dell.
Right, yeah, thank you. Item agenda 5, are there any notifications of questions from members? Ben?
None, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Item agenda 6, appointment of statutory officers for the new senior leadership team of Northamptonshire Council. I would like to invite Councillor Martin Griffiths to introduce this report. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chair of the Shadow Senior Appointments Committee, I am extremely pleased and proud to introduce this next report, which recommends 4 senior and statutory officer appointments that are critical to driving forward our transition to the new Northamptonshire Council and its success thereafter. In addition, section 6 of the report states that recommendations regarding the continuance of interim statutory officers would be brought to this meeting for clarification, and Teresa Grant or Martin Cox will present this item shortly. I'm therefore proposing we conduct 2 votes in respect of this report. The first vote will be for the permanent senior statutory officer recommendations, and the second vote will be for the interim statutory officer recommendations. Before I hand over to Martin Cox to talk through the permanent senior appointment recommendations, I would like to say a few short words. It has been a very busy but rewarding summer in terms of our recruitment activity as we start to shape our senior leadership team. From very early on in the planning phase, the Senior Appointments Task and Finish Group and Senior Appointments Committee, myself, Councillor Annabel de Capelbrook, Councillor Barbara Jenny, Councillor Jean Addison and Councillor Leslie Thurland made a conscious decision to develop an inclusive recruitment and selection process that widened involvement beyond the committee and enabled as many members as possible who have a real stake and an interest in the appointments to be part of this process. With a lot of hard work and planning, I certainly think we achieved our goal, with over 46 members participating in main panel or member stakeholder panel sessions. Using a large number of members across the sovereign councils had an added benefit that many councillors not used to working with each other did so and got to know each other better. I'm also proud to say that we conducted our main panels in person, adhering to social distancing and government guidelines, and panel members felt that this was invaluable. I would also like to extend my thanks to our partners in health, the voluntary sector, and children and young people who supported this process. And of course, the officers within the Future Northants team and Penna, our external search partners whose professionalism was extremely welcome. I believe that we have a robust and fair process, and I, for one, am privileged to have played a part in it. As a result, we are recommending 4 candidates of the highest calibre, who I have no doubt will positively support our new Chief Executive, Rob Bridge, in taking our new Northamptonshire Council forward. So without further ado, I will hand over to Martin Cox, Director Lead of the Unitary Corporate Programme, to provide a brief outline of the report and the recommendations for permanent appointments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths, and good evening, councillors. As stated in the report, report in the first part is recommending the permanent appointment of our senior and statutory officer roles for North Northamptonshire. We need to ensure that we're compliant with the structural change order to appoint our permanent statutory officers by the 31st of December this year. And also, we've got to ensure that we make the best appointments possible. So this has led to a national recruitment campaign that we started in May 2020 and has now culminated in the proposals you've got in front of you. And of course, the recommendation that was positively agreed in August to appoint Rob Bridge as our new Chief Executive. As well as the involvement of members and partners, Rob was able to join us and advise the panels because it was a planned strategy to ensure the Chief Executive is fully involved in the recruitment of the senior team and played a very important part in helping to advise all the panels. The main interview panel members were supported, as Councillor Griffiths said, by our internal colleagues and also Penna. And all members of the main appointment panels took part in and had benefit of training from the LGA, who were really happy to support us in this process going forward. So the main appointment panels or subcommittees, as we've defined in our constitution, put their recommendations to the Senior Appointments Committee like this week's Tuesday, the 15th of September. And all of the committee unanimously agreed to put forward these proposals to the Shadow Council this evening. So if you turn to section 2.1 of the report, I'll read the following recommendations. Janice Gotts recommended for the Director of Finance and our statutory section 151 officer. Adele Wiley as the Director of Legal and Democratic Services and our permanent statutory monitoring officer. David Watts as our Director of Adult Social Services and our statutory DAS officer, and Kathy Hadley as the Shared Director of Children's Services and the Statutory Director of Children's Services. And obviously that's shared with our partners in West Northamptonshire who agreed this appointment on Tuesday evening. So those are the 4 recommendations in the report and a little outline of the process we went through to get to this point. Back to you, Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Martin. Chair, I would therefore like to move a motion that the members of this shadow authority approve the recommendations as noted in section 2.1 of the report.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Furlong is seconding the motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Having had some experience in both the public and private sectors on interviewing and interviewing techniques, I'm very content that our process was good, it was thorough, and it was cross-party, and you all know how I like to use the word cross-party, and I'm extremely pleased to be able to second this item tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. We're now going to go to debate. I have Councillor Eakins first. Councillor Eakins.
Just unmuting, Chair. Thank you very much. Good evening, members. Chair, I'd like to ask a question, if I may, please, and that's that can the members of this Shadow Council be given full assurance that any and the recommendations of the advisory member panels were fully consulted on and that any recommendations were applied fully when the final selection procedure was made in appointing the successful candidates into post as statutory officers for the new North Northamptonshire Council?
Right, I'll arrange that to be answered on the reply, Councillor Griffiths. Right.
Happy.
Do you want to do that now, Councillor Griffiths?
I'm happy for Martin Cox to answer that accordingly, Mr. Chairman.
Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Eakins. Yes, we as the paper outlined to the Senior Appointments Committee on the 9th of July, we set up a number of stakeholder panels, also member panels, and in some cases invited young people to involve in the children's appointment. I can confirm that the advice and the recommendations and the views from all of those panels were compiled by Penna and fed back to the main appointment panels who are responsible for the decision, and they were fully considered before those panels made their decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hagewell.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, excuse me, in Councillor Griffiths' comment, he explained that the widest number of councillors were invited to and to take part. He called councillors who have a stake in the recruitment process. Could he identify have a stake? Talking about 49 councillors, can you also say how were councillors invited to do that? Because clearly I don't remember that, and that might be the swirl of things that are going on now. But what does have a stake in it? How many of us don't have a stake? I would say we all have a stake, whether we endure through the elections or not. I also was copied into an email from someone I'll just initialize as BW. This particular person wrote to the committee, including the leader, on the 11th of September at 7:22 in the morning. Can I have a complete assurance that the concerns raised by that email have been addressed, and in making the decision tonight, there is no opportunity for those concerns to not have been addressed and for this decision to be called into question subsequently? So those are my two questions: having a stake and that particular email from BW, who emailed the council last Friday. Can I also have a confirmation that the leader or Councillor Griffiths has acknowledged receipt of that email with whatever response there was? Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to answer both of those, Chairman. Yes, the email has been responded to very recently, as we would respond to any communication that we received. We all have a stake in making sure that the appointments are right. Due process has been followed. Councillor Hagewell, it was 46 members, not 48 that I referred to, but considerably more, I would say, than was applied by our friends in the west of Northamptonshire.
Could you confirm how those members were invited? That was my question to be answered. How did I miss that?
They were invited by the process and the panel that was selected, and we chose members with experience and members from all of the sovereign councils and obviously in a cross-party way.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Blackenberry.
Thank you, Chair. I was involved in two of those panels, on the main panel for the Statutory Director of Adult Social Services and the main panel for the Director of Children's Services. I must say it was a very robust recruitment process, and I like the idea that the stakeholder panels fed into that. It was good to have cross-party membership of those panels, and it was also good as far as the shared Director of Children's Services. We worked with the North and the West on that panel. I'd like to say just a few words about the recommended appointment for the shared Director of Children's Services, Kathy Hadley. She's been in Northamptonshire now for about 10 months, and she has made an impact while she's been here. She's been working hard with others to deliver the improvement plan for children. Management and staff teams are now more stable and vacancy levels have been reduced. Children's Services, while she's been at the helm, have made good relationships with schools during COVID, which will continue now that children are back at school. Relationships are being built with partners, and we now have some very good foundations upon which to build to provide the services that children and families in Northamptonshire deserve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Stanborough.
Thank you very much, Chair. Nothing more than to, on the assumption that we approve the recommendations, to thank everyone who was involved in the process of interviewing and recruiting the people that we are likely to appoint. Thank everyone who applied and congratulate those who have been successful, and commiserate with those who were unsuccessful, and wish them all the best for the future. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrew Dutton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Chris's congratulations, but also to say that as someone who's had experience of recruitment within the public sector, I would regard some of the numbers of candidates that we got as rather low. And I wonder if you share my disappointment. I certainly don't want to single out the particular appointment of the Shared Director of Children's Services, but to only get 5 candidates, 2 of whom were suitable for shortlisting and then only 1 of those for interview, does seem a rather small number. So I would hope that perhaps there are some lessons to be learned for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Happy to come back on that, if I may, Mr. Chairman. That particular role is highly, highly specialist, and it doesn't surprise me, and it didn't surprise Penna, that the numbers were very low. But I believe we have an excellent appointee, a person to serve both the West and the North in that key role.
Thank you. Councillor Barbara Jenny, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh. Okay, thank you, Chairman. Due to technical problems, I was not able to access the Senior Appointments Committee meeting on Tuesday evening, but having had the opportunity to be part of 2 member panels appointing candidates, I would be very happy to endorse the remarks made by Councillor Griffiths and express my thanks to Penna and officers for the thorough and professional way in which the appointments process was conducted. The broad spectrum of involvement of internal and external stakeholders has resulted in a really outstanding candidates coming forward. I also would like to congratulate them on their appointments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was involved in the Children's Director for both authorities, and I believe it was very thorough and there was lots of due diligence. There may only have been 5 candidates and it was put down to 2, but Northamptonshire is in a very different situation, given that we are now having 2 unitaries. We will have a trust, and the history of Northamptonshire County Council's Children's Services unfortunately wasn't brilliant. But there was very real due diligence, and in fact, in my opinion, we went over what we should have done, but we made it a very good process, and an excellent candidate came out of that. So I've got no problem in agreeing the candidate.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? If I'll go back to Councillor Griffiths for his right to reply.
Can I speak?
Who's that?
Dorothy.
Can you use your hand, please? Because I can't see you because I've got about 5 screens.
I'm using my hand.
Maxwell.
Sorry?
Yes, Councillor Maxwell, go ahead, please.
Right, my question is, do these appointments have a trial period when they're actually when they actually start on their contract? I gather they're permanent appointments, but given the track record of children's services and people resigning and then taking another job, etc., etc., will the people who've now been appointed be on the trial period initially until such time it's then deemed that it's okay for them to carry on?
Okay, thank you. I'll get Councillor Griffiths to answer that and he's summing up. Anybody else?
I think,
Councillor
that's a very important thing. I think Martin Cox should respond to that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. In local government, if you have a continuity of service, so if you come from another partner in local government, then you don't have the traditional, what you call a probationary period. So there is no trial in there. It's not like a redeployment or anything. So that's what we do in terms of the due diligence up front, taking references, making sure that they follow through. So when we make an appointment, we make the most sound appointment possible. And that's where our colleagues from Penna come into that. So there's no trial periods these days, because obviously within the local government family, we expect other councils to give us appropriate feedback to enable us to make a sound decision. If not, then we have to deal with performance in the way we deal with it for any employee. And we have well-mannered practices to be able to do that, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you.
I'd like to come back on that point, because given the track record of children's services over the last 2 years, it's not particularly been brilliant. And I have to say, in education, people who actually go into education, there is a period whereby before you actually get a permanent contract, you have a trial period. So what I'd like to know in children's services, exactly what happens if this goes pear-shaped?
I think that's a question for you, Martin.
The simple answer is we have performance management processes, and we will have with our new council in Northamptonshire, that enable us to deal with any employee who isn't doing and completing their contract of employment. We will have over 2,000 employees, so the directors will be no different to any employee. If we find we support employees to achieve their goals and their job description, but if that doesn't work, we have processes to be able to deal with that.
And I would also add, if I may, Chairman, that this was a national recruitment process organised by the specialists in local government recruitment processes. There was a large number of applications. They were then sieved and shortlisted, and I believe we have the very strongest candidates that have survived and are before you tonight. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll take that as your right to reply. The debate now being closed, you have the recommendations set out for the 4 statutory officers. Ben's going to conduct a poll, so I'll hand over to Ben.
Thank you, Chair. As ever, you have 30 seconds to vote, for, against, abstain, and I am launching the poll now. Thank you, members. There were 91 votes cast, 85 votes in favour, 0 against and 6 abstentions.
So that's 85 for, 0 abstentions and 6 against.
No, other way around. I think that's it then.
Chair, 85 votes for, 0 against and 6 abstentions.
I said. So I've just been double checked here. Thank you. Therefore, that part of this agenda item, they're all appointed, and I wish them all success in their new jobs. Councillor Griffiths, can we now go back to our second part, which is the interim statutory officers we need to appoint?
Before we do, Mr. Chairman, may I just congratulate Janice Gotts, Adele Wiley, David Watts and Kathy Hadley. We look forward to working with you. I would like to move a motion that the members of the Shadow Authority, I'd like to pass over, sorry, if I may, to Teresa Grant, or I don't think she's actually managed to get to us tonight. So back to Martin Cox with regard to the recommendations for the interim appointments.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I'm not Teresa Grant. I'm a pale imitation, but Teresa has been unavoidably detained travelling, so she sends her apologies and asked me to cover this particular item. So now you have positively agreed those 4 permanent appointments. That enables us to talk with those candidates and actually agree start dates with them, and to get them working with us as early as possible. I'd love to be able to say that that could be tomorrow, but people have contracts of employment and notice. So the next bit is to ensure that we have interim statutory officers up until the point those new colleagues join us. Because we have to comply with the structural changes order, and we have to have at all points 3 interim statutory officers, the head of paid service, the interim monitor officer, and an interim section 151 officer. These 3 appointments were ratified at the first meeting, our first meeting on the 4th of June. 2 of our colleagues have now decided to end their interim designations, and therefore we need to appoint an interim head of paid service and an interim monitoring officer to continue the good work that those colleagues started. As I said about notice, it's anticipate this is only going to be for a relatively short period. And Teresa has worked with colleagues and identified 2 experienced and respected senior leaders from our existing councils, of which we have to make the appointment from, who are pleased to support us until our permanent colleagues start. This has been a process Teresa has undertaken and has discussed and shared with executive members. I therefore ask, in accordance with section 6 of the report, that approval be given to the appointment of Mr. Graham Salisbury, who's the Managing Director currently Kettering Borough Council. I'm sure will be familiar with members, as the Interim Head of Paid Service, and Mr. Martin Hammond, who's the Executive Director at Kettering Borough Council, again, I'm sure familiar with most members, as the Interim Monitoring Officer. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Martin. And firstly, I would like to extend my thanks to both Liz Elliott and Bhupinder Gill for their valued contributions to date in these significant interim roles. They will be handing over the reins in a very good position, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole executive that we know both candidates extremely well, and we're looking forward to working with them. Thank you.
Thank you. I take it you've moved that motion, those 2. Councillor Thurlow, are you seconding the motion?
Yeah, Chair, it's Councillor Thurland, not Thurlow. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, while this wasn't expected, I do believe we have acted swiftly and decisively to ensure we have extremely able officers who we are grateful to for stepping up to the plate to keep our train on the tracks going forward to our vesting day. And until our new people can get into their posts. And can I just remind everybody, we can only choose from those who put their names forward for these jobs and for any jobs, and that goes across the whole of the sector, whether it's public or private. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to members, any questions? Do you wish to debate it? Give you another few seconds. Right, back to Councillor Griffiths then.
So I'd like now to move the motion that the members of this shadow authority approve the recommendations for the interim designations of Head of Paid Service and Monitoring Officer as outlined by Martin earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Ben, who will conduct a poll for us.
Thank you, members. Again, if you can vote for, against or abstain, I'm launching the polling now for a period of 30 seconds. Thank you, members. So a total of 90 votes were cast, with 86 in favour, 0 against and 4 abstentions.
That was 86 in favour, 0 abstentions. Sorry, 0 against and 4 abstentions. Therefore, I carry that motion, report carried. Congratulate them on their new jobs. Right, thank you very much. We'll now move to item 7, and we have public speakers. Right.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to bring the speakers into the meeting.
Right, our first speaker.
Our first speaker, Chair, is Stephen Essler. And Stephen has just joined us back in the meeting. Can you hear us, Stephen?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, if you'd like to begin, you've got 3 minutes to make your speech.
Great, thank you. Good evening all. Thank you for my 3-minute allocation. As a person moderately involved in community organisations based in Kettering and Corby, I feel it is important that they are represented as much as possible, particularly given the formation of our new Unitary Council. In relation to the North Northamptonshire Unitary Council draft blueprints, it appears that particular concerns of those in the organisations I speak of are not being prioritised, namely the climate emergency declarations made by both Kettering and Corby Borough Councils. We have a significant and unique opportunity as these new councils are formed to address concerns that thousands of people in my community have regarding climate change and ensuring that our green spaces remain green. As it stands, the draft blueprint does not specifically address the declared climate change emergency. I would like to put to the North Northamptonshire Shadow Authority that we push for the formation of a dedicated climate board within the new structures. I envisage the function of this board to be both advisory and instructional, advising the council in all aspects that have a potential detriment on our environment and instructing the council's partners on what preventative measures must be taken to ensure strict guidelines or targets are met. I applaud the steps that the existing borough councils have taken so far to do some of which they promised after the climate change declarations were made. The financial and logistical barriers during lockdown have had an effect on delivering everything that was intended to be delivered, I am sure. If I'm permitted to answer any questions that you may have, I'm happy to do so, and thank you all for your time.
Right, thank you. We'll now move on to the second speaker. So it's Mr.
Second
John.
speaker is John Padwick. John, if you'd like to commence your 3 minutes.
Oh.
You just need to unmute yourself, John.
That's done.
Again, if you'd like to commence.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. I read today a report that numbers of our permanently excluded students have gone missing. They're effectively forgotten children. I can't find anything about this in the draft blueprint. I've particular concerns around this, working as I did with the county's back-in team for many years, seeking to support schools to avoid exclusions. I'm really worried that in the rush to Unitary and the COVID crisis, that these children will be forgotten again, maybe completely forgotten. It's a really urgent situation. What structures are being put in place within both authorities to ensure that this doesn't continue to happen? Are they the responsibility of the schools, the Complementary Education Academy, the new Unitary authorities, children's services, safeguarding, or will they continue to fall between the now very complex gaps? Seriously worried. What preventative services will be developed? What monitoring structures, such as early help assessments, can be automatically put in place to track these children who have complex needs? And they can be lost to education and in many other ways if such action isn't taken very urgently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go back to Ben. We have our final speaker. Ben, Mr. Desdale?
Yes, Chair. Our final speaker is Des Dill. Des, if you'd like to...
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Thank you, councillors and officers. I get the feeling that this is very much business as usual looking at the draft blueprint. I looked through this document and I'm surprised to see very little acknowledgement or mention of climate change. I spotted the words climate change in the place section on the West portfolio, and then I see climate lumped in with highways, transport and the environment in the North regulatory portfolio. Can you explain these headings and how climate change will be addressed through the North Northants Unitary? As for mentions of climate change in the text, both of those are in the transformation sections, which from the overview of unitary business imperatives make them sound very much like aspirations on a wish list. On page 19 in the transformation section of public health, I quote, "Public health transformation gives greater opportunity through place-based working to integrate health and wellbeing services across the unitary functions and align with growth strategy and our climate change ambitions." I would love to know what those ambitions are. On page 22, the transformation section of economy, infrastructure and growth, I quote, "A resource efficient and connected area will be a better, healthier place to live, more competitive and better place to ride out future economic and climate shocks." I'm glad to see the reality of the climate crisis is being acknowledged with the phrase climate shocks, but I question how shocking this should be, bearing in mind scientists have known that we have been doing to the climate for over 30 years. It is a failure of short-term political thinking that means we're in a situation where protests are held in the street and children and young people felt the need to raise the alarm. These are the only two mentions of climate change in the document, bearing in mind that climate emergency has been declared not only by Kettering and Corby Borough Councils, but by Northants County Council and indeed the UK government, although the urgency obvious in the word emergency doesn't appear to have had much effect. Perhaps more heat waves like those experienced this summer, or indeed the flooding experienced in Wellingborough and across the north of the county, will bring home the urgency for the North Northants Unitary, although I'd hope it doesn't need to come to that. A key finding of the recently concluded UK Government Citizens Assembly on Climate Change was for improved information and education for all on climate change. So please start telling the residents the facts about the climate emergency and how it will affect them. And although I'm not permitted to speak on the later motion due to a rule in the Constitution that I believe needs amending, I want to express my wholehearted support for the climate emergency motion proposed by Councillor Dutton. I look forward to seeing North Northants Shadow Authority declare a climate emergency. And I would urge the formation of a climate committee and citizens assembly to inform the decisions of the new unitary with regard to the climate crisis. So please can you answer how climate change will be addressed through the North Northants Unitary, and what are those climate change ambitions mentioned in the text? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution, and they will be duly answered as the debate goes on. I'd like to invite Councillor Russell Roberts to introduce this report, please.
Sorry about that, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I've been asked to welcome Anna and Paul to talk about the blueprint, a living document which is developing. But before I do that, I just wanted to make a couple of points. We are tonight just noting this report. The word approves on 211 page 23 has been removed, and I believe earlier today an email was sent out to that effect. This is very difficult work, and it's been done over many months, years in fact. So I'm looking forward to listening to Anna and Paul talk about the blueprint. So over to you, Anna, I believe.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Councillor Roberts, for that introduction. So I'm pleased to present this report and the supporting pack of information with the high-level blueprint that we've set out for the two new unitary councils. We're looking obviously for members, as Councillor Roberts said, to note the content and the progress made, and we welcome the ongoing engagement that has started with staff, unions and members on these and on the detailed blueprints that sit below this, which have just been released. The detailed blueprints, just to make sure that everybody understands, are not different to this high-level one, which is presented to you tonight. In terms of the splits that it sets out, it just provides a greater level of granularity, especially for staff, so that they get a bigger sense of what is happening in their areas and services and what the changes might be to their day-to-day jobs. A significant amount of work has gone into these, as Councillor Roberts has highlighted, and we are aware that there are some small anomalies that have been highlighted between the high level blueprint that you see and the more detailed one. And I just want to apologise for that, but I can confirm that it is this master blueprint that is the correct one, and we will be correcting the errors that may have been spotted. For example, that mineral and waste planning will sit in the north as shown on these, and we will be correcting anything else that, that has been misaligned. Moving on though, this work has had to be done in the context of COVID and with the commitment that the programme work and the staff within the programme would not pull on the resources and services that were responding to that pandemic. This is very important because obviously that should be our priority, and therefore to a certain extent the teams have had to work in some isolation to progress this. We had to hold the whole process initially and then scale down the programme to make sure that it had a safe and legal focus in April 20. And we also initially advised members that we didn't think we would have the capacity, the time, nor the ability to split many of the NCC services while we dealt with that pandemic, and that might lead to a transfer of councils, of services to a lead council and no ability to split them before. If this had remained the case, it would have meant a lot of disruption for staff and would have meant they transferred twice, and also delays in forming the new council organisational forms. But despite this, Teresa Grant, as the Service Delivery Director under the SEO and the programme leadership, committed to all members to make sure that if we could, we would split NC services wherever possible to avoid that second transfer, to seek the opportunity to transform as far as we could before day one, the so-called plus element of the programme, and to support ongoing transformation beyond vesting day and make the most of the opportunities that joining up these councils, services and partners will bring to North Hants. It's taken a huge amount of effort to input across input from 60 transformation staff to create what you see and the detail that sits below this. And it's had to be done without distracting the wider staff who needed to make sure that we concentrated on COVID. But we now need to move towards implementation. So going back to the presentation that you have before you and in the pack in terms of this detail, it shows you where and how we expect to safely split the NCC services, systems and staff, with a focus on making sure that we can deliver safe and legal services on day one, to provide assurance to our residents and businesses that they will not see disruption in day-to-day services in the way that their queries and questions are handled, and that we make sure that we can meet our duties, especially safeguarding the vulnerable. The safe and legal diagram that you see before you is a wiring diagram, and most importantly, its focus and the focus of the blueprint is to make sure that members are clear at how we will disaggregate NCC services, which for information means 4,000 employees, and to show which services will be split on day one and where they will go. This is shown on page 38 of your pack. You will note as well that we may have to temporarily ask one authority to host the service on behalf of the two authorities until we complete a contract or a task or an activity that might be put at risk if we attempt to move them on the 1st of April. And one example of that would be schools admissions, which will be at a particularly busy time of year when we move and we go to vesting day. We've also agreed that one authority will lead in some cases for the foreseeable future on an element of service where that service will be more efficient, it's commercially critical, or it could threaten income if we split them. And there are a number of services where the North is now the lead authority for that reason. In both cases, the receiving authority will have a service level agreement setting out the service it will get and the performance it can expect. There will also be some services that remain externally hosted for day one. And these are services like LGSS Law, which is a company that provides legal advice to NCC, and for the time being will continue to provide some legal advice to the two new councils. But critically, the blueprint also set out the planned plus work that's already underway to transform and improve services. And for example, we've provided information about IT investment that will help our staff to do their job and make things easier and better for our customers. And in adults, where we're rolling out 10 community hubs across the whole county to support people in communities, to work alongside the voluntary sector, housing, health, police, and to support better outcomes. And we're also putting in place new systems and better practice within adults to make sure that our customers get the best service going forward. We have also identified some opportunities for the potential that putting together all the services will mean that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole in North Hants and will deliver better and joined up services. And there are examples of this on page 42. On pages 43 to 53, we have set out some of the assurances that will provide that services will be safe and legal, some of the plus elements and things we're going to deliver for that day one, and some of our aspirations and opportunities. This is not intended to be a policy document, and that's why, for example, it doesn't set out the information and policy on climate change, because that is very much a matter, obviously, for members in the new councils, not for the wiring diagrams and how we actually set up and transfer the services. I won't go into the detail of the supporting pack, but I would remind members that we've also published a YouTube video that talks through what the blueprints are and the transformation that we'll be undertaking, and that will be supported by a frequently asked questions database for staff and other stakeholders. We've also met with the unions on the 17th of August to share this high-level blueprint, and they had that in advance, and we're waiting for their feedback, which we expect on Monday. And also on the detailed blueprint, which was shared with them last Friday to make sure they had advanced time to consider it and think about the workforce. I'd like to finish just by saying these are high-level documents, and while they're important, just as the name blueprint suggests, the main purpose of them is to set out a plan to build the new unitaries, just as we would build a new house with a technical design that showed you the foundations, the wiring and the room layout, and the raw materials that will be taken from the 8 councils to form the new councils. They do not set out how the house or the unitary will be furnished or decorated or presented, or the wider development that they might sit in. That is a matter for the new council and administration in the north and the executive. They are designed just to show you how the services will sit within the North portfolios and who provides them, but they're not exhaustive and they are not a structure chart. The final structures and delivery service plans will, of course, be a matter for the administration and your new executive and chief executive, Rob Bridge. The next steps for us are set out on pages 55 and 56. And as you'll see, there's a lot of work still to do. There's a lot of opportunities to progress and thoughts to develop. Paul Helsby and I have offered to meet political groups in the West and do Q&A sessions face-to-face or by Zoom, and we're more than happy to do that for any members who would like that, or any opposition members in the North too. And we're happy to attend overview and scrutiny as required to provide any more detail on this or the detailed one. But it's also really important that we get on with laying the foundations and the wiring, and that is what we're seeking today. Because we need to make sure that we've got the tools to do the job, the plans in place and the actions underway, as we only have 138 working days till we go live. I will just pick up the other public speakers' question on children's and exclusions. Again, that is part of the policy and practice and priorities of the administration and of children's services. And that is something that will be developed both with the trust and obviously with the DCS that's in place in terms of a priority that's very clearly been set. And I know something that concerns Kathy Hadley. So that will be picked up there, but wouldn't be picked up in this functional diagram that we've shared with you tonight. Paul, can I just ask if there's anything else you want to add, please, before we hand back?
Yes, thanks, Anna. There's just one thing that I'd really like to just stress and hopefully reassure members that the adoption of the blueprint is not the end, it's the start. And the engagement that needs to happen beyond that is really important, and it's vital to engage with our staff, with the trade unions, with all the elected members, and also work closely with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to get the best possible outcome of this blueprint. And the blueprint doesn't stop on the 1st of April. It's a living thing, and all the transformational opportunities that this presents are all part of that journey. And that's why you see some things in here that allude to those aspirations. But what we have to do, and as Anna said, we have 138 days, and we need to provide the reassurance for our 5,000 or so colleagues that work in these organisations that they understand where they will be on day one, and that's, as Anna's explained, that's the wiring diagram. And it's not transformational, it's the nuts and bolts that allow us to be able to say, these members of staff will be working here in this building and so on. We need to be able to do that quickly and reassure staff so that we don't lose fantastic people that we've got working in Northamptonshire. And I just say, just to add to that, what we're aiming for in this blueprint because of COVID is minimal disruption on day one for our workforce and no disruption on day one for our residents. And then the transformation journey can start. And I'd also just add, that the transformation journey is starting early in adult social care, and there's lots of fantastic work going on in there. And as Anna said, we've been more than pleased and have done previously and will do again to talk to members specifically or as groups in what that transformational activity is that's going on in adults, because it's really exciting and it's helping to change lives and help people maintain their independence. So that was all I would just like to add in support of what Anna said, and hopefully reassure members that this is very much the wiring diagram and not the wallpaper and the lighting and all those other things that we would do, as Anna said, in that analogy of a house and a blueprint for a house. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now move to Councillor Stephen North to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll just say a few words. I mean, it is very welcome that we've actually got to this stage. I think I welcome the report and Anna's presentation. I think, as the leader has said, Chairman, that as you're very aware, that leaders and key officers and staff have been working on this for many years to get to this point. And as 3.1 shows, that COVID just hit at the wrong time for everybody, but it hit this programme particularly at the wrong time, as we just launched into what was going to be called the straw man in relation to how services knit together. So I would, Chair, say it's very welcome that we've even got this blueprint to you, and I certainly would like to thank all the staff and members involved to get to this point. I appreciate I was one of those. So, Chairman, I do actually move point 2, which is all those recommendations lay before you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Jenny, you're going to second it?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo the sentiments of Councillor North, of Anna and from Paul. If I wanted to keep up the surveying analogy, I would do, but just a comment to the public speakers, particularly about the climate change. That's coming under my remit, and now that we've got this in place, we as shadow executive members can actually start to get hold of the whole process and move things on. So it's a real big step, this, in towards going live on the 1st of April. So I wholeheartedly welcome this, and I'm very pleased to be able to second the proposals.
Thank you very much. We'll go over to members now for the debate. I'll start with Councillor Hakewill first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really motivated by the analogy of building a house. I built an eco house with ground source, underfloor heating, solar power and so on, and a B rating, and I'm sure Councillor Jenny will understand that. But the point is, we had to plan from the very beginning, and the point about climate change, which the speakers mentioned, is that if you don't put climate change into the heart of everything that's going on, or you don't put eco measures into a house from the beginning, not the wallpaper, but all the rest of those aspects, then you can't retrofit it. And I think that the point that Stephen Esler and John Padwick and Desdell articulated particularly well is that we are still looking at climate as an afterthought and a tack on to another portfolio which we existed, and that largely has happened because of the comments of speakers. I was proud to second the climate emergency at NCC and to propose it at KBC. I'm particularly glad to hear that the leader of the council describes the blueprint as a living document. So I think tonight we really should send a very clear message that whilst this has been approved, it's a living document, and that this group of people sat here tonight want the message to go forward that climate change is at the heart of everything we do. I don't need to tell you to turn on the TV and look at those who deny climate change and look at the reality of what's happening around the world and how people are suffering. So from that point of view, I think we should say to the shadow executive in this living document that climate change should be a specific committee, a specific theme. We should also try and embrace and invite people like Stephen and John and Des to be co-opted into those committees, because the knowledge within these rooms could happily be complemented by what they also could say. I'd also like chairman or whomever legally can do so, why were those speakers not allowed to speak in the motions that come towards the end of our agenda? We're supposed to be open and transparent. We want more people to be engaged and enthused to both stand and get involved. To not allow them to speak in a timely way at the motion, can we understand why and understand how we can change that for any future meetings of the Shadow Authority? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll make certain that last point of yours is dealt with, and we'll come back to it in due course. Councillor David Brackenbury next, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And may I congratulate everybody who has been involved, both members and officers, for such a comprehensive blueprint, which is, as has been observed, it is a blueprint. It is not exact. It is not policy as such. Other members are obviously going to be discussing some various policy issues. I was touched by Mr. Padwick's presentation, which was not actually about climate change. It was actually about children being permanently excluded from school. And I think that struck a chord with many of us. So I would be very interested to see how the young people can be, especially in a very vulnerable position, can be helped through this particular can we help through this particular process? Obviously, COVID and some of the dislocation that's been caused by this has naturally had a considerable effect, and people who are at the bottom of the food chain, who are vulnerable, who are in a difficult position, probably need more support rather than less, especially when everybody's being distracted by this national pandemic. So, Chairman, I commend the document and I thank everybody for the hard work that they've done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor John McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's a bit confused about this document. That's, as we can see, it's been heavily led by officers. I imagine there's some of the ruling party's councillors been involved, but certainly not many. And there's certainly not had any real input from any opposition members. And I think that is a real shame. The Councillor Griffiths and others talk about cross-party. If you want cross-party moving forward in your new authority, you have to have input from opposition members and others at an early stage, not having it done to them. And that's what's happening with this document. In fact, one of the speakers said it's already a done deal. Is it a motion? Is it a decision thing? Are we just noting this? It should be a living document. And when the new authority is in place, I would expect that all councillors have a real input at re-looking at that document and having a good say about how changes move forward. Because let's be realistic about this. We are now separated into two unitaries because of the failure of Northamptonshire County Council. We know that. What a disgrace. 100 years of an authority down the drain because they failed. We don't want to make that same mistake moving forward into the unitary. We have to be better than that. And that means working across all parties and taking on board what they say. So perhaps this document can have a real opportunity to go to scrutiny and have input from all councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Stanborough, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to address any sort of misapprehensions, I don't know, misconceptions that members might get over this document. So it's being described very much as a wiring diagram and nuts and bolts. But we shouldn't be sort of drawn into thinking it's something innocuous. This is a document that's going to drive the budget of the unitary authority. It's absolutely determining how much money the authority is going to spend on staff, on premises. For instance, there's a requirement for us to use One Angel Square in one of the slides. Don't really know why we would want to be paying for One Angel Square here in the north, but apparently that's what we might be doing. And it's an expensive building, as some of us know. You know, I heard it said earlier today that during COVID, we haven't been in the office much, but we've been able to provide services. So, you know, buildings, I'm not so keen on them right now because they increase the council's costs. Staff, they deliver services, we need them. And then you have things like hosted services and lead authority services and outside agencies providing services. These all commit the council to spend money that it may want to spend on other things, or they may want to spend on having the services delivered in-house. And I get that some of them we will be able to bring in-house as an authority at some point. But, you know, this document is driving the vast bulk of the money the council will spend when it becomes a substantive authority. So it's worth paying some attention to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrew Duffin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking for something really positive to speak about with the blueprints, and I found one thing with the 10 community hubs for adult services, and I think that is a real positive going forward because it enables people to access services at a local level. And I do hope that perhaps other aspects of the blueprint will also move towards more localism rather than centralising everything we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mick Screnshaw, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I thank Anna Earnshaw for a really useful and detailed presentation. I sort of really benefited from that. Chairman, originally we were being asked to approve the blueprint presented in tonight's agenda, although it seems now that has changed to note it. Either way, I'm happy to do so, but only under certain circumstances. You will be aware that the authorities overview and scrutiny committee have already looked at this blueprint, and hopefully details of our discussion and comments are on the way to the executive. Our comments related to things like climate change issues, which have been mentioned, and to the fact that a new, much more detailed document has apparently been published this week, which unfortunately we were unable to see at our meeting last week, and which apparently gives far more detail and specifics than the sort of high-level strategic document that we're discussing tonight. Obviously, before members of this authority they need the opportunity to look at the more detailed version, and non-executive councillors should certainly be given a chance to comment and make any recommendations they feel necessary. I mean, rightly or wrongly, I think some members feel that they are sort of being left behind all the processes at the moment, including this one. And to that end, Chair, I'll happily note this current high-level document, so long as we can formally agree that the more detailed version will be presented to the scrutiny committee for their further deliberation, with their further comments being fed back, obviously, to the council's executive. I would further hope that other members of this authority, not just scrutiny members, will also take the opportunity to raise any thoughts or comments they have at that time. And as chair of scrutiny, I'll certainly do anything I can to allow that to happen. So can I ask, Chair, can I propose an amendment to the recommendations before us and propose that 2.1.1 and 2.1.2 remain exactly the same, that 2.1.3 is altered to the following: that the authority notes the publication of the more detailed blueprint on the 14th of this month, and to ensure proper review, this version of the blueprint should go to the next overview and scrutiny committee as part of a wider consultation with all elected members, to ensure that any future vision of the blueprint properly represent the expectations and aspirations of the Shadow Authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for your amendment?
Yes, Chair, I was in the list to speak.
But I've got to deal with the amendment first now, Councillor. You're seconding, so we will now debate the amendment.
Yeah, Adam Henley seconded.
Yeah, I got a second on the second. We will now debate this amendment. So anybody else who's going to speak on the original part, you'll have to wait till we debated the amendment, which is in simple terms, like it goes to the next scrutiny committee with all executive members having a chance to have an input into it. Is that a basic way to describe it, Councillor? You're muted still.
Unmute.
Unmute. Councillor.
Yes, non-executive members, of course, and of course, including members not on the scrutiny committee themselves.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on that?
I've got Councillor Hales and Councillor Stambler who've put their hand up since the amendment.
Right. I'll start with Councillor Hales. Do you want to speak on the amendment?
Yes, Chair.
Go ahead, please.
I actually wasn't going to speak tonight because I'm not actually standing. So in some ways, you know, it's not going to really bother me as an individual councillor going forward. But I am really concerned that we're going to fall into the trap what happened to the county councillor. We were told, you know, one of the reasons that we were not informed as backbenchers, and that's even more so going through this period of 18 months, 2 years we have, as we're only looking at the finance. We've not been looking at in health, children or adult social care. And I think it is really sad that backbenchers are being disenfranchised through this process. It is not on. And also, I'd like to highlight that we don't actually meet again till February. I mean, by February, where's the budget? Where's the discussion in budget? Where is us as backbenchers being to scrutinise this? We have got no chance whatsoever. And I think if democracy lives on, we have got to take this chance and take this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I want to jump to Councillor Roberts just for a moment, please. Councillor Roberts?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to support this change because scrutiny has been front and centre, and Councillor Scrimshaw knows that we want to have full scrutiny. We always have. And that we've he commended Anna's presentation tonight, and she made a lot of points about how we are reaching out and talking to different people and offering meetings. So we are scrutinising this. We are talking to people about this. We've got it on the website. We're recording the presentation so that more people can look at them. So I don't think there's a need to change it. I think we need to get on with the job. I think Stephen North, Councillor North was right. We've been at this now for a little while. We need to get on with it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I want to speak on the amendment, please.
Hang on. I've got a list I'm going to work through.
I was early on the list.
Yes, I know, but I've had to ask. Councillor Henley, if you want to speak on the amendment, please go ahead, and then I'll move down.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Let's be clear, members, as to what we're asking you to do tonight. We're being told that overview scrutiny is very important, but the reality is that the Shadow Exec had already approved the draft blueprint before we were asked to comment on it. The fact that they'd already approved it suggests that our views weren't exactly important, because once it's already been approved, they're not going to go back and go, oh, thank you for that. Let's be clear, next week's Shadow Executive meeting, they're asking the Shadow Executive to approve the detailed one, the one that was published on Monday. So after a whole 10 days in the public record, it'll be going to Shadow Exec for their approval. Then on the 8th of October, the overview and scrutiny will be asked to review and note that document. It's entirely the wrong way round. We had a YouTube presentation, which has now disappeared off YouTube. I don't quite know why, but the reality was it was not a question and answer session. It was a transmit session in a similar way to the way that Mrs. Earnshaw spoke tonight. We were spoken at for half an hour on the draft blueprint. There's no attempt to take questions, no attempt to have a wider debate. Councillor Stambler has correctly identified the fact that we mentioned Wellington Square. I raised this overview scrutiny and we were told, well, it's to help have a contact centre there. Our residents won't want a contact centre there because they don't care about Northampton, because they won't be living in Northampton. They will be living in North Northamptonshire. It's like having an embassy elsewhere. It's just bizarre behaviour. I get the fact that we have officers in there, but the sooner we get them out there and get into our own area, the better. So let's be clear, if we don't accept the amendment tonight, next Thursday, the shadow exec will very likely approve the detailed blueprint, and then that'll be the end of that real debate. Anything else is window dressing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to go through the list. I want to ask Councillor Victoria Perry, do you want to speak on the amendment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. If the word adopted had still been in the document, then yes, I think I would have supported this. And I did speak at scrutiny about how important it was that scrutiny is aligned with the process. However, we are just noting this today. But following on from my concerns that I had at scrutiny, I sought clarification from the leadership, from the executive, and from the CEO. And I was assured that this is a living document, that scrutiny will be invited to comment throughout. And I'd want to add to that, that scrutiny is open to all. All people can come to scrutiny. All people can come to scrutiny at Northampton County Council, although not many seem to. Even people who seem deeply concerned don't. And all people can go to the executive and raise questions and discuss it. So as we're just noting it today, I don't feel I can support the amendment, but I am confident that I have been assured that scrutiny will be robust, ongoing, and is very welcome. And so I feel that there is no need for that amendment. And so, as I say, I would have supported it had it said adopted. It says noted, and I think it's unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Anderson, do you want to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm going to support the amendment because, as my colleagues have already said, we do need to have a wider member engagement with this. When come next May, our council will be responsible for what's being put in place now. And it's okay saying, oh, things can be changed. Chair, it takes a long time for those changes to be put in place. And we need to ensure that our members have had a full and robust opportunity to have a say in what goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Sims, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
I wasn't really going to speak on the amendment, but I will make one comment. As it's already been pointed out on this, that we're noting this document, not approving it as such. So therefore, I don't see any point in going supporting this amendment whatsoever.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chris.
Further on.
Seen you, Chris, you're there somewhere. Yeah, that's it, thank you.
Are you asking me if I want to speak on the amendment? I couldn't hear you.
Your hand's up right now.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get on to ours. It may have wanted to speak on the original motion as well.
I'd like to speak on the amendment, please.
That's what we're doing now, sir.
Yeah, good. Okay. So we've been told that the high-level document is a living document, and no doubt that means that the detailed blueprint is also a living document. And it's the detailed blueprint that I think that Councillor Scrimshaw is proposing that we give scrutiny a chance to comment upon. And I think that's absolutely right. I don't think anyone's seeking to hold anything up. If it's a living document, it can be approved by the executive next week, and scrutiny can come forward with sensible suggestions, and then they can be incorporated should those that make the decisions so wish. There's no problem. So let's not constrain scrutiny. Let's have a look at a living document in scrutiny, and let's support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hakewell.
I will. Yes, speaking to the amendment, the comment has been made that scrutiny is front and centre. And I cannot believe that Leader says that when we have had 11 task and finish groups meeting in private, no agendas, no minutes, nothing. Scrutiny is not front and centre. Scrutiny is being bypassed, and the problems that happened at the County Council was not so much the process of scrutiny, but the ability of those in charge to do something as a result of that scrutiny. So here we are, 109 people sitting here this evening, being flashed up a document with, albeit a good presentation from Anna and Paul, but being told you can't do anything about it, that's the way it is, and that it's moving forward like an oil tanker, not an oil tanker, like the Titanic. So my view is that we should be able to amend this evening. We should be able to get involved. And once again, vast swathes of councillors, whether or not they're standing, Eileen, whether or not, you're going to live under this process and probably be more frustrated by not having a role in it, sitting watching what is going on. So scrutiny is not front and centre. It's all being done in private to the largest extent, and scrutiny, the official committee, just get the crumbs off the table afterwards. Tonight, by supporting this amendment, we can take control of our destiny, the destiny of the council, and the destiny of the future of the people of Northamptonshire.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what Councillor Roberts and Councillor Perry have said. I see no problem with the amendment, but there shouldn't be a need for this amendment. Scrutiny should be able to scrutinise things without actually having put it in writing for what they're going to scrutinise. They should be entitled to ask and receive what they need so they can do their proper job in scrutinising. So I don't see a need to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Scarborough, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wasn't planning to speak on this item because the amendment seemed so self-evidently sensible. But I have to confess, I am extremely surprised, and if I'm honest, slightly disappointed that Councillor Perry and others are so easily mollified by the warm words from our executive colleagues, particularly given that Councillor Perry has extensive scrutiny experience at NCC, where these things did not go well. The proper time for broader input is before the executive makes its decisions. What we have instead here from the executive is the same old story. First of all, we do what we like. Secondly, we allow you to scrutinise it so you can say what you like to say. But thirdly, we carry on as if nothing had happened. That's the record that we're working against here, and it needs to be changed for this most important piece of work. I strongly support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor David Sims.
He's already spoken once.
You've already spoken once, so you can't come back on that. Councillor Jason Smithers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. I listened to this with quite some interest, really. Councillors are saying they, from the scrutiny, didn't see the high-level blueprint, but it's my understanding that that blueprint was viewed by them last week, and of course they're not being asked to approve at this point. But I must take real umbrage with Councillor Scarborough's comments about the executive. That's not how it works, Councillor Scarborough, and I'm quite disappointed that you think that way.
Thank you. Councillor
Ruth Groom.
Ruth Groom. Sorry, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I shall be supporting the amendment. I think there are a lot of things going on at the moment that needs to be looked at constantly, and particularly to do with environmental issues. So I shall be supporting it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been very interested in listening to the debate on this so far.
I think all of us agree that high levels of scrutiny are absolutely vital, and we all do have very much in mind the problems with Northamptonshire County Council. However, so far as I've listened to this debate, councillors have brought up, I think, two issues that they have with the blueprint. One of them being that there is no specific portfolio for climate change, but I believe that that portfolio is held by David Jenny, so it is in there. It may not be on the face of the description of his portfolio. And then the other seems to be about the use of One Angel Square. So I think today in this meeting, there has been a level of scrutiny. Somebody, you know, the comments have been made, the executive will have heard those comments. And I think it's really vital now that we do get on and get this blueprint agreed so that we can move on to the next phase, which is where we will start to talk in much more detail about things like climate change and my particular area of interest, which is health and well-being, and how those things are going to be incorporated at the heart of decision-making going forward. I think if we spend lots more time agonising over whether we scrutinise the blueprint properly, when you look at what's in that blueprint, as I say, as far as I can see, there's only two genuine suggestions as to how that blueprint ought to have been changed. So I'm not going to support this amendment tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I believe there's a lot more than two things in there, and indeed, if it had been put to scrutiny beforehand, there would have been a lot of issues raised. So this isn't scrutiny. This is an opportunity to raise some issues for people. But Chair, I remember in 2005, just as the Conservative, your own party, came into county, and the first thing they did, they said, we want a quick win. And they spent a big, they introduced a big contract with Carillion that spent 16 million the first year, double it should have, then 32 million the year after, that put them in a huge debt. What's happening? What happened there is similar to what is happening now. You're not listening to members. And maybe you think this opposition is just saying this. Your backbenchers behind you have got the same fears as us. This document will take us years into a new authority spending millions of pounds for the residents of Northamptonshire. It deserves a good scrutiny through the right process by all councillors, including your own backbenchers and including opposition councillors. And you're doing the wrong thing if you push this through without making that happening. You're not learning the mistakes from NCC, and you're going down the same road if you don't listen to people that are trying to help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bob Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been listening to this. I wasn't going to speak on it, but I've been extremely sad in listening to the debate. Russell, has said for a long time he wants the new council to work as a partnership as far as possible. And to do that, you've got to really take on board other members' views. And this doesn't appear to be happening. Actions speak louder than words. And the whole debate has reminded me about how the county council operated for a number of years until it was reformed and had the commissioners come in and change that scrutiny system around. And I'm very saddened to see that this is the way this new council seems to be heading before it even starts. And I'd just make a plea with you that however it seems, members' views have to be taken into account. Members' views are important. They represent hundreds and hundreds of people in the divisions that they represent. And it's important that they have the opportunity to bring those points to the fore and debate things effectively, there's been no real debate about this document. There should have been a debate. There should have been some sort of agreement going forward on the main principles before you wanted a blueprint authorization. Because while the wording is being changed in note, the tenor doesn't seem to be saying that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bridget Watts, please.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my point. I'd really like to just echo what Councillor Scarborough said. And in my experience of scrutiny, an awful lot of scrutiny seems to be done after the fact, when it would probably be more useful to do it before the fact and stop wasting people's time and an awful lot of money. I will support this motion, but that's my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, you've spoken on this amendment, so I'm afraid you can't speak again.
Chair, it's not to speak on the amendment. If I may, Chair, I'd like to move a recorded vote on the amendment.
How many?
We need it to have, how many people?
We're just checking how many we need.
17, Chair, according to the Constitution, page 78. I'm sure if everybody puts their hand up on the participants, that'll help you get to the numbers.
That's an excellent idea.
Can we talk?
Hang on. Oh.
No, wait. Oh,
can we still talk?
Well, I've had no one else debate. Everybody's spoken to date.
I have put my hand lots of times.
I'd like to talk.
Right. Well, those who got their hands up, just take down for the moment, please. Then we can see what's going on. I've had a request for recorded vote, but I've got no other hands up to speak on the amendment. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment before we go about recorded vote?
I would like to talk.
I will also put my hand up lots of times.
Councillor Maxwell, please will you use your electronic hand because we can't see you.
I don't have one on an iPad.
My electronic hand is up there.
Councillor Maxwell, you do. If you go on to more, and then if you press more, the dots on the right, top right, and go down, it says further down there, raise hand.
Raise your hand.
Right, thank you. I will take you last. I've got you right. I'll take Councillor Julie.
Dudley Hughes has been asking to speak for a long time as well.
His hand. I need to have the hand up, please. So I'll deal with Councillor Julie Riley first, please.
Good evening. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I feel very strongly that I support this motion, this amendment, because I do feel very strongly that we should do things properly and have scrutiny before we have the executive meeting. And that's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tony Aslan.
Thank you, Chair. I had no plans again to speak, but I think I have to speak. It's no point giving a box of gift when there's empty box in there. So I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I would like to say basically that this document, we've only got half of it because actually downloading 100 pages didn't actually work out. The thing about this document is I don't believe in the cabinet form of this type of document. I think that the members, the councillors who represent the residents are not really having a say in anything. A small group of people make a decision on behalf of the rest of us, and the rest of us are like mushrooms sitting in dark.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Dudley Hughes, if you want to speak, we do need to see your hand in future. So
I've got my hand. There it is. I've put it up about 3 times.
Go ahead.
Are you using your electronic hand, Councillor?
I am indeed. The little hand comes up on the screen, on my screen.
No, it's not the hand, it's the blue electronic hand. It's not the thumbs up.
No, it's not the thumbs up.
No, you're using the blue electronic hand.
That one.
Using the clap facility, Dudley.
No, anyway, I'm here. What I'd like to say is, for years I was I was chair of a scrutiny committee when I always felt we were scrutinising what had always been decided. And I think this is not the way to go with the new council. We should be trying to make an input before things are decided. So I would support the amendment. And I would say that, and as the way goes, that one of the things that I think the county council failed to do was to actually consult the members before they made the decisions, and they made it even more difficult. We couldn't speak at cabinet meetings. So please can we have this amendment, and please can we be involved as much as possible in a new authority that is going to actually affect the lives of thousands of our residents.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on the amendment? Councillor Wendy Bracken, you've already spoken, so you can't speak again.
Are we going to close debate, Chair, and then move to the recorded vote?
We're now going to close the debate. We will go to recorded vote. I know we've got enough.
We need to, can we just have a show of hands?
Right, show of hands for recorded
vote,
please. I need 17. I've got 1, 2.
On the blue electronic
hand, please. That's it.
Blue electronic hand. I've got blue electronic hand. Yellow.
Everyone has a blue electronic
Yeah, we
hand.
have sufficient
Part of Zoom. It's the only way you can.
Thank you.
Okay, that's enough.
We have enough. We are now doing a recorded vote, and Ben will conduct it.
Paul will be conducting the recorded vote.
Paul.
Are you ready to start going through the names, Paul?
Yes, thank you. I get the hard version rather than the easy one. I'm going to read out all the councillors' names. I apologise, I'll read the full list. It will include... Is that... I don't think that was me.
Right. If everybody moves, mute your mics, and you can bring down your hands now. We'll go to the vote, and Paul's going to conduct it for us.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the list of names. It will include names of people who may have given apologies because I haven't had time to cross their names off. So if you're in attendance, please unmute yourself when I call your name out and say either for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstain. Thank you, Chair. I'll start. Rosebery Abram.
For the amendment.
Linda Adams. Jean.
Give a pause.
Sorry, I'll leave a pause and then move on. Jean Addison.
For the amendment.
Tim Allibone.
Absent.
Valerie Anslow. Tony Aslam.
For the amendments.
Duncan Bain. Paul Beattie. Tom Beattie.
For the amendment.
Rosalie Beattie.
For the amendment.
Ray Beebe.
For the amendment.
Joe Byrne.
Kevin College.
Paul Bell.
I abstain as chairman.
Jenny Bone.
Against the amendment.
Tony Botto. David Brackenbury.
Against the amendment.
Wendy Brackenbury.
Against.
Julie Brookfield.
For.
Anne Brown.
For the amendment.
Sedwin Brown.
More for against.
Michael Brown. Lloyd Bundy.
Against.
James Burton. Judy Kane. John Paul Carr.
Against.
Val Carter.
For the amendment.
Colin Cassidy. William Colquhoun.
For.
John Currell.
For the amendment.
Anthony Daly.
For.
Alison DL.
For the amendment.
Ashley Davis.
Against.
Annabelle de Capel-Brooke.
Against.
Mark Deering.
Against. Against.
Yeah, I've got that, councillor, thank you. June Derbyshire. Maggie Don.
For.
Andrew Duncan.
For the amendment.
Scott Edward.
Against the amendment.
Jonathan Eakins.
For.
Elise Elliston.
For.
Brian Emerson.
For.
Bob Isles. John Farrer. Lawrence Ferguson. Elaine Francis.
Amendment.
Jim French. Richard Gale. Roger Clitheroe. Robert Goff. Lucy Galt. Barry Graves. Glenville Greenwood Smith. Martin Griffiths.
Against.
Ruth Groom.
For the amendment.
Jim Hakewell.
For the amendment.
Eileen Hales.
For the amendment.
Clive Hallam.
For the amendment.
Ken Harrington.
I am against the amendment.
Helen Harrison.
Against.
Adam Henley.
For.
Jenny Henson. Sylvia Hobbs. Philip Holloway.
Against the amendment.
Marion Holloman. Helen Howe.
Against.
David Howes.
Against.
Dudley Hughes.
For.
Sylvia Hughes. Herbert Jackson. Ian Jelly.
Against.
Barbara Jenny.
Against the proposal.
David Jenny.
Against the motion.
Lance Jones.
For the amendment.
Matt Keane.
For the amendment.
Willie Latter. Laura Lawman.
Against.
Graham Lawman.
Against.
Anne Lee.
For the amendment.
Richard Lewis.
For the amendment.
Timothy Maguire. Paul Marks.
Abstain.
Alan Matthews. Dorothy Maxwell.
Against the amendment.
Peter McEwen. John McGee.
For the amendment.
Andrew Mercer.
Against the amendment.
Jill Mercer.
Against the amendment.
Clark Mitchell.
For the amendment.
Cliff Borton. Peter Morrell,
Against the amendment.
Sandra Nadine Hawley, Stephen North,
Against the amendment.
Jan O'Hara, Bill Parker, Tom Partridge Underwood,
Against the amendment.
Umesh Patel, Sarah Peacock, Mark Pengelly,
For the amendment.
Harriet Pentland, Victoria Perry,
Against.
Janet Pinnock, Ron Pinnock, Roger Powell, Mohammed Rahman, Matt Ray, Rupert Reichhold,
Against the amendment.
Julie Riley,
For the amendment.
Russell Roberts,
Against the amendment.
Mark Rowley,
Against.
Sarah Scanlon, Andrew Scarborough,
For the amendment.
Bob Scott,
For the amendment.
Nick Scrimshaw,
For.
Jeff Shacklock, Jeff Simmons,
Against.
David Sims,
Against.
Brian Skittrell,
Against the amendment.
Alex Smith,
For the amendment.
thank you, Chris Smith-Haynes,
Against.
Jason Smithers,
Against the amendment.
Chris Stamborough,
For the amendment.
Shirley Stanton, Philip Stern, Laura Stevenson, Carl Sumter, Margaret Talbot, Mike Tebbert.
Abstain.
Sorry, Councillor Tebbert.
Abstain.
Thank you, sir. Leslie Thurland,
Against.
Greg Tickham,
Against.
Peter Thomas,
Against.
Michael Tye,
Against the amendment.
Robin Underwood, Jake Vowles, Jay Wallier, Malcolm Ward,
Against the amendment.
Veronica Waters,
Against the amendment.
Malcolm Waters,
Against amendment.
Peter Wathen, Kevin Watts,
Against.
Andrea Watts, Bridget Watts,
For the amendment.
Kelly Watts,
For the amendment.
Andrew Wetherell,
Against the amendment.
Alexandra Wellings,
Against.
Jonathan West, Lee Wilkes,
Against.
Colin Wright, Martin York.
For.
Just give me a moment, please.
146.
Have one of my colleagues got the actual figures? By all means, shout them out.
Yes, I've got the figures, Paul.
I was
It's Councillor Anslow here. I didn't respond, I didn't unmute myself in time.
Too
late.
Chair, the councillor was called. Your determination, do I accept the?
Yeah, go ahead and accept it.
Okay. Councillor Anslow, your vote
Yes.
for, against or abstain?
I'm for the amendment.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, Ben, sorry, over to you.
Okay, Chair, the final figures are in favour of the amendment, 41, against the amendment, 46, and abstentions, 3.
Great. Thank you. That's 41 for, 46 against, and 3 abstentions. The amendment's lost. We're back to the original motion. Who wants to speak now? I've got a number of blue hands up. You've clearly spoken on it. I think you should clear everybody's hands and we'll start again. Okay. Back to the original motion then. I'll start with Councillor Tony Aslam.
I've got my hand up there, Chair, now.
You've got your hand up, sir. Your blue hand is raised. Please lower it. Thank you.
I do apologise, Chair. I've taken it down now. It was my right hand rather than the left hand, sorry.
Councillor Hake, well spoken.
It's all right, because we can go back to the original.
Right, we're back to the original. Councillor, right. Councillor Maxwell on the original motion.
On the original motion,
Yeah, the amendment's lost, so we're now back to the original motion. Do you wish to speak?
yeah, I'd like to say that I still feel very strongly the fact that the members, the councillors, don't really get a say. And I think that if we're representing the residents, we should have a say about this document, and we haven't had a say. So that hasn't changed.
Thank you. Now, I'll try and get this right. I've got Councillor Annabelle D. Capill. Is that Brooke? Brooke. Sorry. Cable Brooke.
It is, sorry, I didn't have my hand up at all, so apologies.
The other moment, you could just lower it. We'll move on then. Councillor David Sims.
Thank you, Chair. What I wanted to say about this document, I think it's a very comprehensive document in many ways. It's a framework document, it's a living document, it's already been stated. People and councillors will have plenty of time to put input into this and to scrutinise as it goes along, because it's going to be constantly changing. There is no policy as such into it, like was mentioned earlier about the green policy of the ecology and the the climate change was mentioned. I'm very passionate about that myself. In Corby, I mean, lots of sovereign councils now, Wellingborough, Corby, Stinley, and in Kettering, we've all done a lot to do with the climate change. In particular, Corby, with the formation of an organisation called Electric Corby, which is a separate community interest company, which works in association with Corby Borough Council and has delivered much of its green agenda in this area. And I'm very proud to be actually a director of that and that company, on that board. So going forward, I think the green agenda will be incorporated as councils when after vesting day. I'm sure it will, and I'm sure the framework will probably be added before then. But certainly, I would support going forward a green agenda. But I would like to congratulate everyone who's been involved in the document, because it's been done in difficult times. No one expected COVID to be here. People have worked remotely. Been a lot of pressure on a lot of people to deliver this, and I think they should be noted. And I would just like that to be noted. Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chairman. And overview and scrutiny is absolutely vital. That's clear from this debate tonight. What I suggest we now do is get on with it. Let's get on with scrutinising the blueprint, the detailed blueprint. Looks as though there's going to be 60+ members at the next overview and scrutiny committee, and I would welcome that. I'll resist commenting on where overview and scrutiny went wrong at Northamptonshire County Council. We don't want to go down that road, do we?
No, we don't.
I totally agree with Councillor Sims. We've got to get on with this work now. Mention was made of staff working at Angel Square. We need to consider the interests of those staff and where they will be situated on day one. And I think that's worth mentioning as well. So we've had a good, healthy debate. Let's get on with the rest of the business tonight. Let's set up a overview and scrutiny committee to go into the fine detail of the blueprint. And I think they will come to the conclusion, as a lot of people have, as independent people have, as MHCLG have, that this is a huge step in the right direction to deliver a North Northamptonshire unitary that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ruth Groom, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm very glad that the blueprint is a living document. As far as climate change is concerned, I have been on Kettering Borough Council long enough to remember the local Agenda 21 committee about 15 years ago. So I particularly like the idea that one of our speakers suggested of having a board. I think that the idea, going back to the local Agenda 21 committee, the idea of having of using external partners and tapping into their expertise is not a new one. And I think that there's so much knowledge out there. Local Agenda 21 and the climate change is an important enough issue to have a separate board. So I think that's a future thought for the blueprint. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Perry, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say about this, I'm actually really pleased that our Chair of Overview and Scrutiny raised that amendment, because it brought forward so many more people that are interested in scrutiny. And what I now hope, and I echo what Councillor Griffiths said here, is that those people that have expressed such an interest use the opportunity, come to the scrutiny meetings, put questions into the scrutiny meetings, attend the executive, put questions into the executive. They're all opportunities to scrutinise. And I say that quite proudly because I'm Vice Chair of Scrutiny at the County Council, I'm Vice Chair on the Shadow, and I'm very proud of my involvement and my working relationship with the opposition. But what I do see is people coming to full council meetings, both here at NCC, grandstanding about scrutiny, who I have never seen at a meeting, who I've never seen at a cabinet meeting. So if you're that passionate about it, take the opportunity to scrutinise. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Mercer, please.
Here.
Thank you, Chairman. As this is a living document, I would like to just say that could we perhaps, when there are changes, as changes will obviously come in, that we are notified of those individually, rather than having to look at another document that is lots of green and blue and black, and having to match them together to see where the changes are. Could we just have them notified as we've changed this because of this, and then we know where we are? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Backerman and Councillor David Jenny, you've already spoken, so I'm afraid you can't speak again. Councillor Peter Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what this debate shows me tonight is that the quicker that this authority can move back to the committee procedure rather than the one that we are forced to have for the beginning of the authority, the quicker that happens, the better. Then there is no such thing as a backbencher. All members have an opportunity to have their say in the particular subjects they have great interest and can bring it to the full council as and when it meets. I just want to make that point.
Thank you. Councillor Russell Roberts, please. Sorry. I've just
it's been a long night, obviously. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody for having a really good debate. But as has been said by Stephen North, Councillor North, we do now have to get on with things. I think there's going to be more scrutiny, and I'm sure there's going to be more people involved going forward. But we do now need to get on with the job. And the thing to do now is to support this blueprint going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's up to you, Chair, if you want to end the debate now, if we've had a good debate.
At this point, there are remaining hands who've already spoken on the subject, so I'm going to end the debate and go back to Councillor North to exercise his right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. To move this on, it has been a very, very useful debate, and in relation to all that's taken place tonight, but it's just a friendly reminder that the hand has been cast by the government in relation to this through the structural change order. We didn't choose to have an executive. That was put upon us, and although I'm part of that, again, I would like to thank all those people involved and the staff to get where we've got to tonight, Chairman, because as I said earlier, because COVID hit just at the wrong time, just as we were going to go into what was technically called the straw man, how all these services were going to be pulled together, and there was going to be further consultation with staff and members on that journey before we came to the programme. So again, Chairman, I'm very pleased to move the proposal, and although the programme director said transformation will wait, I also commend that as I'm chair of the Task and Finish group for transformation, that there is transformation in the Safe and Legal, and it is Safe and Legal Plus, Chair. So once again, I do move the recommendations as in recommendation mark 2 on the papers on the front page.
Thank you. The debate has now closed. The recommendations are set out on page 23 of the agenda pack. I will now ask Ben to conduct electronic poll. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I shall launch the poll. If you can vote for, against or abstain, and then press the submit button, and you will have 30 seconds in which to vote. Thank you, Chair. That was 86 votes were cast, 56 in favour, 22 against, and 8 abstentions.
Thank you. For 56, against 22, 8 abstentions. That's now carried. Moving on to item 8, notice of motions. I've received 2 notions of motions in relation to Executive Council functions as per the agenda for the meeting. In accordance with the meeting procedure 12, a maximum of 15 minutes is allowed for a debate on a notice of motion. This period shall include any speeches made by the mover, the seconder, and at the end of the debate, the respective lead member shall have the opportunity to respond. No speeches, including the response, will exceed 3 minutes. No amendments to this motion may be moved, and the motion will then stand referred to the shadow executive. Councillor Dutton, I invite you to move your motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. The passing of climate emergency motions last year recognises the mitigation and adaptation of climate to climate change must be a strategic component of the future planning of the new unitary authority. The motion commends what's already been achieved, but it's also a call to action. In Kettering, the level of emissions has reduced from 8.6 tonnes of CO2 per person per annum in 2005 to 6.1 tonnes. That sounds great, but assuming exponential decline in CO2 emissions, we would achieve a level of about 3 tons of CO2 per person in 2050. That's far from being carbon neutral. So good things. Rockingham Forest for Life is a flagship project for Northamptonshire. The hope is that by 2025, it'll be recognised as a nationally important initiative for the regeneration of an ancient woodland. Planting new areas of forest will not only lead to increased carbon capture, but will knit fragments of ancient woodland together and provide wildlife corridors and a sustainable habitat, thus increasing biodiversity. Each of the draft logos for the Unitary Authority pays visual homage to Rockingham Forest and comfortably locates North Northamptonshire within England's green and pleasant land. But what we need is challenge, not false comfort. Climate change will not be tackled by a few high-profile policies. It needs to be on everybody's agenda and in everybody's work plan. A task and finish group was set up to approve the 3 logos, which went out for public consultation. But is a corporate image more important than the climate emergency? This is a matter of real urgency, and I commend this motion to you. We need a task and finish group to ensure that robust and achievable policies on the environment and climate emergency are ready to be implemented in the planning and development decisions taken by the Unitary Council after vesting day next year. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stanborough to second the motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to second this motion on what I believe is the most important long-term challenge facing the new council when it comes into being, and facing the population of the world too, just to put the 2 extremes in there. It's vital. It's something we need to address as a shadow authority, and we need to address it in a way that gives the issue the maximum amount of attention. Our colleagues in the West have set up a task and finish group that deals specifically with the environment and the climate emergency. I think we should do the same. We don't want to be left behind, do we? It's surely best practice for us to take this issue seriously and to do this. So I wholeheartedly support this motion and hope that members, when speaking, will do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor David Jenny.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Howell, no, was it Councillor Howell? No, it's Councillor Harrison. I apologise. Pointed out very eloquently earlier on, this is all part of my portfolio. It is not being forgotten. In fact, it is being actively promoted. I'm already talking to senior officers involved, and I would commend and remind members that we already have a very effective joint planning and committee and delivery unit, which is working and has been working for many years on this subject. And I would commend the work by Andrew Longley and his staff to all of you who probably haven't read what's actually being done. The North is significantly in advance of the West in all of this work. We are progressing. What I will undertake to say to all members is that the effects of climate change will be a policy requirement for evaluation for everything. It will be embedded. It is totally necessary to embed. Nobody is in their sane mind is going to argue against anything like that. However, I don't believe that a task and finish group is actually the way to go forward, because already we have the works in hand being carried out under the auspices of Councillor Tebbit, who's chairing the JPDU at the moment. And we are well in hand. If you look at my portfolio, rural affairs is also added on there. There are other things that, you know, I could put a whole page of A4 printing on as to the responsibilities. I have got in mind thoughts about using experts, and members can be assured that as far as I'm concerned, this will be treated exceedingly seriously. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I think there is some confusion, because from my understanding, the portfolio holder responsible for this is Councillor Jason Smithers. But I do know that he's worked extremely closely with Councillor David Jenny on this subject. Indeed, we all have. And I think every single councillor has. But I just thought I'd make that point, Chairman.
Well, Councillor Smithers to reply. That's the information.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do believe that this is actually part of my.
Excuse me. There are still people to speak. We still have 6 minutes. Councillor Jay Hakewill, please.
Jay Hakewill here. Frankly, I don't want assurances that I'm going to be involved. I want to get involved in this particular issue. I strongly support the 3rd paragraph of the motion. All the time in the last debate, we heard that scrutiny matters. We have virtual meetings. No one has to travel a mile or emit any CO2 in order to have a virtual task and finish group under the shadow authority. We've heard from Stephen Essler, John Padwick and Des Dell. I know all 3 of them, known them for a long time. They have so much to contribute that does not exist within the, well, albeit 96 participants that are here tonight. I just don't understand the reticence for setting something up, a bit of officer time, have that group, engage with the community. There are so many people who don't have the time to sit and watch these or be told what we're doing. So many people who could get engaged, and particularly young people. Young people are passionate about this. If you watch what their views are, why are they passionate? Because they're going to have to live through a much longer time of climate change than almost, in fact, everybody in this room. So we need to engage with the knowledge that's latent within our communities, and then that task and finish group can pass on its knowledge. So if scrutiny matters, set the dance task and finish group up, set it up quickly, put a bit of resource in, and let's make a better future for ourselves, and more importantly, our children and grandchildren, not a side issue.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. People act as though the climate emergency, which they refer to, came out of nowhere. It's not something that's sudden. Margaret Thatcher made an important speech on the subject in the 1980s. This has been coming for a very long time. We should perhaps have paid more attention to it earlier, but people were more scared about other issues earlier, like the Cold War. So when you've dealt with the bigger ones, you move down your priority list. We will be dealing with the climate emergency, but it's an international issue. You can't just fix it in Northamptonshire. I won't go into the ratio of our carbon output compared with, say, China's, but ours is less than their annual growth typically. We've got to play our part, but we're not going to fix it just in Northamptonshire. Now, a task and finish group I don't really see how that's going to help us. We're committed to dealing with the issue and playing our part, but does that assume that we don't know anything about it and we haven't been doing anything for years? As I recall, Kettering went out of its way and built a wind farm to play its part. East Northamptonshire built one in Chelveston. We're all working towards the same direction. There's no suggestion that someone isn't pulling their weight, but that seems to be the hint.
Mark Pengelly, you've got 4 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Pengelly, please.
Yes, Chair, I attended a real interesting good meeting yesterday to do with the landfill at Ruston. At the meeting was some members from the Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and some independents. It was a great meeting where we all got something out of it, all contributed to it and found a way forward. Today, this evening, we have heard the Conservatives tell us 3 different people in charge of this. They're not too sure themselves who's in charge of the climate change accord within the North Northamptonshire Authority. It worries me. Let's work together. Let's set up a committee working together to do what's best for North Northamptonshire. That's the only way to move forward, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, how can I not support this motion, Chair? Living in a borough with an award-winning ancient woodland at its centre, a council that has put solar panels and has built houses to save fuel poverty for our residents, and of course electric charging points. I could go on. So I welcome this motion and will be voting for it.
Thank you.
It's about 2 minutes left or something.
Right, Councillor Maxwell, you have a maximum of 2 minutes left of the debate.
I just want to say that given the amount of pollution that we still need to actually monitor and is not being monitored on the roads, and we have some really long roads in our county and particularly this side of the county. And I think that this motion, that we should be discussing it, it is something for the next generation, not necessarily our generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Smithers, in your capacity as lead member, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the climate emergency is very much on the Shadow Executive's agenda and radar. And I'm sure my friend from the Liberal Democrats will surely know that we will be aware of this, and he can rest assured that we will cover the valid points raised naturally. So I thank him for the notice of the motion, and we will consider the matter at the next Shadow Executive meeting on the 24th September and look forward to discussing the matter then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The debate's now closed and the motion stands referred to the Shadow Executive Committee meeting of the 24th September 2020. Moving on to motion 2. Councillor Stamber, I invite you to move your motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm moving the motion on the issue of the government publication by the government of the white paper Planning for the Future recently. 9 in 10 applications are approved by councils, with more than 1 million homes given planning permission over the last decade, yet to be built. The system needs to ensure planning permissions are built. Any loss of local control over developments would be a concern. It would deprive communities of the ability to define the area they live in and know best, and risk giving developers the freedom to ride roughshod over local areas. Not my word, not my words. They are the words of Councillor James Jameson, Chairman of the Local Government Association. And he's absolutely right. This is something that needs to be opposed. It's going to take away all those things. So what I would suggest is that we consider some of the things that are wrong with the proposals. Zoning, local authorities have to bring forward stripped back local plans, all land in their areas for growth, renewal or protection. Zoning it as such. Areas zoned for growth will benefit from outline planning permission, but developers will still need to secure reserved matters permission, though councils won't be able to debate the principle of the scheme. Areas for renewal, zoned for renewal, will be seen as suitable for some development, such as densification and infill development, and will benefit from a statutory presumption in favour of development. Local authorities will have 30 months to produce a new style stripped back local plan. Councils will lose the ability to set local policies. Instead, all planning policy will be set nationally. Section 106 will be scrapped, and the existing community infrastructure levy will be morphed into a nationally set levy on development value. The levy bill will be paid at the point of occupation, leaving councils to pay for and deliver any infrastructure needed up front. There will be top-down housing targets imposed by government. All in all, there's not much control locally anymore. So, in the words of Mr. Jameson, if we are to truly fix our chronic housing shortage, councils need the tools, powers and flexibilities to plan for and deliver the quality homes and places communities need. Planning for the future doesn't do that. I commend this motion to colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dutton, to second the motion, please.
Yeah, I'm pleased to second this motion, Chair. I wish to declare an interest. I live a short distance from Hanwood Park, the sustainable urban extension which is emerging at a snail's pace on the eastern border of Kettering. The East Kettering Sustainable Urban Extension is a mixed-use development, 5,500 dwellings, secondary school, 4 primary schools, parks, play areas, employment areas, local facilities, including shops, healthcare, and associated infrastructure. Outline planning permission was granted on 1st of April 2010, over 10 years ago, and the slow progress in producing greatly needed homes has, in my experience, been entirely due to developers and not to local authority planners. I see around me in the fields as I go for my daily exercise walk, which I dearly need, evidence of the million homes which are sorely needed but haven't been started, homes for which planning permission has been given. We need developments which provide homes, jobs and important facilities, and local planning has a vital role in ensuring that existing residents are able to go about their business with minimum disruption and that developments are completed in good time. Local planning is essential in ensuring that houses are built which are affordable and environmentally sustainable. These are matters of paramount importance for our communities and for our planet. If the planning function of local government is further weakened, developers would have the whip hand and the only significant driver will become the profit margin. I do invite the Shadow Authority to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Scarborough.
Thank you, Chair. It's very hard indeed to be against the sentiments of this motion. The government's proposals in their planning white paper have managed to unite an astonishingly broad coalition of those opposed to what they suggest, all over the country, all aspects of those concerned with the planning system. But I have to say, and rather echoing Councillor Jenny's comments on the previous motion, I do think that this motion is firstly unnecessary, and secondly, nothing like specific enough in terms of the impacts on North Northamptonshire. As Councillor Jenny rightly said, we have a very fine joint planning unit who are working on a response from North Northamptonshire to the government white paper. They've already held a briefing seminar for councillors at which some very critical views of the government's proposals were expressed, and I may say from all shades of political opinion. A considered view is being developed. It will be put to the Joint Planning Committee for approval, and it will represent a settled view on this from the political community of North Northamptonshire. To give some examples about the non-specific nature of this, there's no mention here of the implications of higher growth targets for North Northamptonshire. The The JPU has estimated by calculating using the government's algorithm, that's a dirty word I know, but using the algorithm, that the requirement for new housing in North Northamptonshire will double as a result of the white paper. We're already taking huge growth, but specifically locally, we are talking about a doubling of the number of houses expected to be delivered, and therefore massive pressure for speculative development. This motion would have been useful had it referred to that. I have to say, in my view, the response via the JPU is the right approach for the Shadow Authority to adopt here, and this motion adds nothing to what the JPU will put in on our behalf.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Martin Griffiths next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the proposer and seconder of this motion for bringing something forward that, frankly, every single member that's on this Zoom call tonight should be familiar with, and they should respond to this consultation because it's that important. There is good and there is bad in the white paper, and there are things that will never reach through legislation. Let's encourage everyone to respond to this white paper. We've had meetings already. We had a meeting with NCALC the other day and encouraged our parish councils to respond to this as well. I would also add that the government needs to act on the 220,000 empty properties that we have in this country. And one thing I know is if Councillor Scarborough says a motion is unnecessary, well, that's good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark Mitchell, please.
Yeah, thank you. This is the one I've been waiting to talk on. I parrot the views of other people that have already said. I support the sentiment of this motion. I've already spoken on this paper at Planning Policy in Kettering. The idea that outline planning permission can be automatically given goes against environmental issues that have been raised by other people. So I support the sentiment of this motion, but again, as I say, it doesn't seem to have any oomph. I'm sorry, I'm not the best person to enunciate my words. But yeah, so I support the sentiment, but it needs more. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I am pleased to see the cross-party consensus in the principle of this motion. I agree with colleagues that the motion itself to this shadow authority is probably unnecessary, and commend the work that the Joint Planning Unit and Joint Planning Committee are doing on a North Northamptonshire basis to respond to the consultation. I know that the individual sovereign authorities are also going to be responding to the consultation, and I echo Councillor Griffiths' point that individual members of this shadow authority should be very strongly encouraged to respond in a personal capacity, and I know colleagues who are doing so as we speak to the consultation. So it is a disaster for local accountability. Individual councillors will no longer have any right to vote on individual planning applications if this is enacted. It is a complete disaster for local accountability, and I think that it is something that should be resisted in the strongest possible terms by as wide a stakeholder group as possible. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Joint Planning Unit, September the 3rd, 3.6, Appendix 2. Shows how the standard formula would result in 3,009 dwellings per year, 64% increase on what we've all been viewing on the previous methodology figure, and a 72% increase in the adopted joint core strategy requirement for 1,750. The thing this motion has done for some of, not all clearly from the previous contributions of the 94 participants still at this meeting, has demonstrated that this is a massive, as Councillor David Brackenbury has said, assault on local determination. There's little or nothing, and at least the Labour Party, when they brought the MKSM and brought growth, put some funding into it, however you feel about the background to that, for infrastructure and jobs. But the point I think that is most important is, and maybe Councillor Jenny can tell us on average how many members of the public, when we physically could, actually go to the joint planning unit and feel that it is relevant to their future, and how many virtual views of it are there. The Joint Planning Committee put a policy in place in Rothwell North to put a link road, a strategic link road through the middle of a housing estate. And that was years before Persimmon brought it to fruition. Thousands of cars, hundreds of people are now in a brand new estate going to live next door to a link road between the old A6 and the new A6. When we were asking that this was the wrong thing, we were told the JPU had sorted it all out years before. And when you look back, hardly anyone took any engagement with it. So I really welcome this, and I'll vote for it simply for the fact that it might have opened a few eyes here tonight as to the sort of attack that a government with a majority of 80 is having on one of the most precious things to our towns, parishes, boroughs, unitary, which is, some say, in what happens around us. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Our last speaker will be Councillor Jad O'Hara.
Sorry, I've got my hand up as well, Chair.
We've only got 1 minute, 20 seconds left, I'm afraid.
We've only got 120 seconds left.
Yeah, I've had my hand up for the last 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah, so our people. I'm sorry, Councillor, we can't do it.
Right, we've got 1 minute left.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I think it's very important that we carry on with the consultation and that most people comment. We are actually already doing the work on the JPU. We've also have the building healthy homes that has been done in partnership with the NHS, and that it is imperative that we build the homes that are fit for the future, that they're eco-friendly, they are reducing our carbon emissions, and look at ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps. So I don't think we really need this motion because we are already doing the work. I think what's important is that we put all our thoughts into building regulation so we comply, so that builders are adopting this and are made to deal with it instead of building cheaper homes for profit. And I think that's what's imperative, and I think that's what we will do under our new unitary authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The 15 minutes of debate has elapsed. I invite Councillor North to respond as lead member.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for that. It's very much welcome, even at this late stage in the evening, after 2 hours 40 minutes that this has been brought forward. It's been very interesting contributions for everybody. Certainly support the comments made by Councillor Brackenbury and Councillor Scarborough. It has been mentioned tonight, Chairman, that we have the JPU, and of course we have our Sovereign Council still, but obviously we're here to represent North Northamptonshire Council tonight. And I know the council I represent is responding, and I'm on the joint planning committee with other members here, and they are also putting forward a response, but they don't represent this authority. And I've actually already asked, Chairman, that this authority has the opportunity to respond to this consultation, because obviously the implications going forward, this authority will have lots to deal with going forward after May next year. But this is one of the most important things that affects the people of North Northamptonshire. I think it has been mentioned already, Chairman, that there are over 1 million permissions already in the country for houses. The blame is already always left with local government rather than the development industry. And even though we are a shadow authority and don't have any powers as such as yet, as I've said, Chairman, I've already asked that even though we are in a shadow mode, that we do get a chance to put a response forward on such an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. The debate now being closed, the motion stands referred to the Shadow Executive Committee meeting the 24th September 2020. Right, I confirm there's no urgent business for consideration. That completes the business of the meeting, and I now declare the meeting closed and wish you a good night.
Night, Chairman.
Night, everyone.
Good night, Chair.
Good night, everybody.